Think about the pure biological physics of a heavyweight punch for a second. You got 265 pounds of moving mass accelerating at this incredible speed, and it just comes to a dead stop against a human jaw.
Yeah, it's a terrifying equation.
Right. It's an act of violence that requires peak physical resilience just to survive, let alone win. So now, I mean, imagine taking those physics and applying them to a 38-year-old body that has spent the last year and a half, like, just lounging on a couch.
It's a bad combination. The reality of combat sports is that the human body, it really doesn't care about your legacy or, your highlight reels. Doesn't care how many championship belts you used to
No,
win.
not at all.
It only cares about what you can physically withstand in this exact moment.
Exactly. And welcome to the Deep Dive. It is Saturday, April 11th, 2026. Today, we are looking at a massive stack of sources for you. We've got boots on the ground, sports journalism, sharp betting analytics, lively forum debates, and the official World Boxing Council ratings.
All of it.
All of it. And we're using all this to understand tonight's Clash of the Giants, which is streaming live on Netflix right from London's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yeah, and our mission for you today is to basically cut through that massive wall of promotional noise. We want to look at the genuine physical, tactical, and psychological stakes of Tyson Fury returning to the ring.
For the fifth time.
For the fifth time, right.
Yeah.
Coming off his 16-month retirement to face Arslanbek Makhmudov. And Makhmudov is, to put it mildly, a terrifyingly dangerous Russian-Canadian knockout artist.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we really need to talk about the sheer absurdity of Tyson Fury reversing his retirement yet again. I mean, it is a fascinating psychological study. We have this athlete who has essentially conquered the entire heavyweight landscape, but who simply cannot walk away from the spotlight.
You really can't.
So before we even look at the tactical breakdown of tonight's fight, we have to understand why he is doing this again. Like, what is actually driving him?
Well, the sources paint a picture of a man with intensely mixed motivations. On one hand, you have the tragic reality of, life's fragility. Fury explicitly cited the recent tragedy of his rival, Anthony Joshua, losing close friends in a car crash.
Oh, man. Yeah, that was awful.
It really was. And Fury said that incident was a dark reminder that there is, quote, no tomorrow. So he felt he needed to maximize his time in the ring while he still drew breath.
Right, I get that. But then on the exact opposite end of the emotional spectrum, you have the crushing mundanity of everyday life. I mean, he literally talked to reporters about how bored he was.
Yeah, doing the school run.
Doing the school run, just dropping the kids off at school, doing the grocery run, walking the dog. He said, and this quote really stuck with me, he said, "I've completed the game of boxing, but without boxing, I don't have a purpose."
It's the classic existential crisis of the elite athlete, right?
Yeah.
When your entire identity is forged in this crucible of violence and public adoration, the school drop-off line feels completely hollow.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
But here's the dangerous part. Finding a renewed sense of purpose doesn't automatically translate to physical preparedness. And that brings us to the weigh-in, which it sent absolute shockwaves through the boxing community. Fury tipped the scales at 267.9 pounds.
Which is actually down from the 281 pounds he carried in his last fight against Alexander Usyk. But like any fitness expert will tell you, lighter absolutely does not mean fitter.
Not at all.
The boxing journalists who were standing just a few feet away from him on the stage were all using the term skinny fat to describe his physique.
Ouch.
Yeah. They noted a visible loss of muscle mass in his chest and his shoulders, but he still had that characteristic spare tire around his midsection.
Yes, and physiologically, that is a massive red flag.
Explain that for us. Like, why is being skinny fat actually worse for a fighter than just being heavy?
Because it suggests his body entered a catabolic state during his training camp.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
So when an athlete doesn't undergo a structured, long-term strength and conditioning program, but instead they just rush a diet to drop numbers on the scale, the body panics. It needs energy, right?
Right.
So it starts cannibalizing its own muscle tissue for fuel while desperately holding on to fat reserves for survival.
Oh, wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
This means Fury might have literally burned away the dense muscle armor he desperately needs in his neck and shoulders just to absorb the impact of Makhmudov's punches.
That's crazy. He essentially lost his shock absorbers.
Okay.
And compare that to Makhmudov, who weighed in slightly lighter at 264.9 pounds, but looked like he was carved out of solid granite. And knowing he's at a physical disadvantage, Fury immediately went to work on the microphone. He's claiming he actually feels sorry for Makhmudov, stating, "For the first time, I'm the hunter."
Yeah, he's trying to dictate the narrative before the first bell even rings.
But I'm just not buying it. Think about, like, a legendary rock star who insists on doing one last massive stadium tour. They haven't rehearsed, their vocal cords are shot, they're just banking on the crowd's nostalgia.
We've all seen that.
Right, but in music, the worst consequence is you miss a high note and get some bad reviews. In heavyweight boxing, the consequence is getting your orbital bone crushed by a 264-pound giant. If his body is physically eating its own muscle just to get to the starting line, does the psychological posturing even matter?
This raises an important question, right? How does physical deterioration actually impact a fighter's psychology? Because it deeply affects how they project themselves.
Right.
When a veteran fighter looks across the stage and claims they feel sorry for a wildly dangerous opponent, it's almost never genuine pity. It is a classic overcompensation tactic.
Oh, for sure.
You see it all the time across combat sports.
Yeah.
When you are facing a physically superior threat and you subconsciously know your own body is failing you, you project absolute theatrical dominance to convince yourself just as much as your opponent.
And if Fury is leaning that heavily on mind games, we really need to talk about is not your standard easily rattled opponent who is just, happy to be on Netflix.
No, not at all.
We are talking about a 36-year-old Kumyk fighter from Dagestan who now lives and trains out of Montreal, Canada. He goes by the Lion. Now, the World Boxing Council, the WBC, currently has him ranked at number 17 in the world.
Which means he is right on the fringe of the elite, desperately hungry to break into that top tier.
Yeah.
And his record tells you everything you need to know about why people avoid him. He has 21 wins, and 19 of those are by stoppage.
And wait, it gets crazier. Out of those 19 stoppages, 13 of them happen in the very first round.
Exactly. He possesses this terrifying, raw, natural power. He doesn't just beat guys, he turns their lights out before they've even established a rhythm.
But it's his mindset that is truly wild. I was reading through these profiles and the sources, and we are talking about a guy who literally wrestled a bear when he was a kid.
Which is amazingly kind of a rite of passage in certain parts of Dagestan.
A literal bear. He told reporters that if he ever discovers he has a phobia, he views it as a personal challenge that must be conquered immediately.
That's intense.
So you have a guy who wrestles apex predators for character building. No wonder he didn't even flinch at the weigh-in. In fact, during their final face-off, Makhmudov reached out and physically lifted the 6'9" Tyson Fury off the ground.
Yeah, he just picked him up.
He just picked him up into the air, and when the massive UK crowd started booing him, utterly unbothered, he just calmly looked out at the stadium and said, "After the fight, you're going to love me."
What's fascinating here is the stark contrast in how these two men process pressure.
Hmm.
You have Makhmudov's quiet, almost stoic confidence, which is heavily driven by his religious faith and a lifetime of austere discipline.
Right.
That is completely juxtaposed against Fury's loud, bombastic insecurity.
Hmm.
But as analysts, we also have to look at Makhmudov objectively. His raw power is absolutely his greatest weapon, but historically, it has also been his biggest crutch.
And that is the exact friction point of this fight. Wrestling bears and knocking guys out in the first round makes for a phenomenal Netflix promo, but his record isn't perfect. He is 21-2. So if he is this terrifying, unstoppable force of nature, how on earth did he lose those two fights? What is his kryptonite?
Well, his kryptonite is exactly what Tyson Fury's camp has been studying. Makhmudov lost to Adjikabayel and Guido Vianello. Both of those fighters exposed a crystal-clear blueprint of his flaws.
Okay, break that down for us.
So, Makhmudov is essentially a flat-footed brawler. He relies on lunging into his punches. Both Kabayel and Vianello utilized constant lateral movement. They never move straight back. They constantly step side to side.
Which forces Makhmudov to constantly reset his feet before he can throw.
Exactly. And more importantly, they let him swing at the air.
I want to pause there because we hear that phrase swinging at air a lot in boxing commentary, but why is that so physically exhausting?
Think about the biomechanics. When a 260-pound man throws a massive hook and hits a target, the opponent's body absorbs the kinetic energy of that punch.
Right, the other guy takes the impact.
Yes. But when you throw that same massive hook and miss completely, that energy has to go somewhere. Your own muscles, your joints, your labrum, your knees, they all have to suddenly act as the brakes to violently halt that momentum so you don't just spin out of control.
Oh, Oh, wow. I never really thought about it like that.
Yeah, doing that repeatedly absolutely drains your central nervous system. Caballero and Vianello made him break his own punches for a few rounds, completely exhausted his gas tank, and then stopped him in round 4 and round 8.
Okay, so that is the blueprint. But how does Fury, at his current age and in his current physical state, plan to execute that?
Well, according to the training camp reports, Fury actually spent 10 weeks isolated in Pattaya, Thailand, explicitly to overhaul his style. For the last few years, Fury relied heavily on the Kronk style of boxing.
Named after the famous Kronk Gym in Detroit, right?
Yes, the Kronk style, especially for a giant like Fury, involves marching forward, planting your feet, throwing heavy shots, and then physically leaning all of your body weight onto your opponent.
It's just bullying them.
You literally use your massive weight to exhaust the other guy's legs.
But that completely failed him in his last fight against the undisputed king, Alexander Usyk. Usyk was just too fast to be leaned on.
Right, so tonight, Fury has supposedly abandoned the Kronk style. He's attempting to return to the elusive, jab-heavy lateral movement that made him so famous a decade ago.
And on paper, his physical dimensions should make that possible. Fury is 6'9" with an incredible 85-inch reach. Makhmudov is big, but he's 6'5.5" physics with a 76-inch reach.
That's a big gap.
It is. Now, I will say, if you dive into the box rep forums, you'll see hardcore fans arguing that Fury isn't actually 6'9" anymore. They point out that years of carrying massive weight and taking impact causes spinal compression.
Which is a very real physiological phenomenon. Over a 20-year athletic career, the discs in the spine compress, and a tall fighter can absolutely lose an inch or more of height and structural leverage.
Even so, a 76-inch reach versus an 85-inch reach is a massive length advantage. Fury can theoretically hit Makhmudov from a distance where Makhmudov is literally just punching oxygen.
And that dynamic is exactly what is driving the betting markets right now.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Look at how FanDuel is interpreting this clash of styles. The safest bet on the board, sitting at -350, is that this fight does not go the 12-round distance. Somebody is getting stopped.
Almost a guarantee.
Yeah. But the calculated upside bet, paying out at +300, is a highly specific scenario. It predicts Fury surviving Makhmudov's initial terrifying onslaught and then getting a knockout in rounds 7, 8, or 9 once the Russian completely gasses out. It's like a matador exhausting a raging bull. The bull is incredibly dangerous for the first 3 minutes, but if the matador can just keep sidestepping, eventually the bull defeats itself.
That matador setup makes a lot of theoretical sense, but there was a massive hole in it.
What is it?
For the matador strategy to work, the matador desperately needs his legs. You have to be able to bounce and dance away from danger for half an hour. And if we look at the assessment from Fury's own father, John Fury, it is brutally honest.
Right, I saw this quote.
John publicly claimed that Tyson's legs have been, quote, gone, ever since his punishing trilogy wars with former champion Deontay Wilder years ago. If your legs are gone, you cannot be a matador. You become a stationary target for the bull.
Man, when your own father is putting that out in the press, that is devastating. And it really reveals that tonight isn't just about the tactical X's and O's of Fury versus Makhmudov. This entire event feels like a referendum on an entire generation of heavyweight kings who simply refuse to step off the stage.
It really is the twilight of an era, and honestly, it's getting hard to watch. Look at Fury's peers right now.
Yeah.
Former unified champion Anthony Joshua was violently crushed by Daniel Dubois. And in his desperation to stay relevant in pop culture, he ended up taking a fight against the YouTuber Jake Paul.
Which is just wild to think about.
And Deontay Wilder looks like a hollow shell of himself, engaging in these crude, sloppy brawls against veterans like Derek Chisora. Even the current undisputed king, Alexander Usyk, is resorting to fighting a kickboxer, Rico Verhoeven.
Really? A kickboxer?
Yes, simply because the heavyweight division has run out of legitimate prime boxing challengers for him.
The hypocrisy from Fury is just staggering. He explicitly went on record a few years ago saying he didn't want to end up looking like Wilder and Chisora. He literally told the press, age waits for nobody.
He did say that.
Yet here he is in 2026, targeting not just tonight, but 3 total fights this year, including 2 potential bouts against a clearly faded Anthony Joshua.
It's pure nostalgia.
Meanwhile, you have the actual new generation, guys like 21-year-old Moses Itama. He is already the Commonwealth champion. He's ranked number 2 by the WBC, and he's just waiting in the wings watching the old guard hoard the spotlight.
And we have to acknowledge the massive platform they're using to do this. Netflix is streaming this Clash of the Giants live to tens of millions of homes. And if you look closely at how Netflix structured this broadcast, they know the main event is a massive risk.
Oh, absolutely.
They built a stacked undercard around it to guarantee high-paced action.
Right. They put Conor Benn taking on Regis Prograis at 150 pounds and a heavyweight clash between Fraser Clark and Justice Hooney.
Because if Fury's legs really are gone, and he just tries to hold and clinch Makhmudov for 12 rounds, it could be a remarkably boring fight.
Mm.
The undercard is Netflix's insurance policy to make sure the casual fans don't turn off their televisions. It is a glittering spectacle designed to draw the world's attention, masking the very real physical decline of its main attraction.
Which really makes you wonder, when you log into Netflix tonight and see these two giants walking to the ring, look closely at Fury's legs. Ask yourself, are we tuning in to watch elite athletes at the absolute peak of their physical powers? Or are we just buying tickets to a nostalgia tour?
Probably the latter.
Are we just hoping to see a 3-second flash of the magic they had 5 years ago?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at why we, as a society, are so deeply drawn to these comeback narratives and why these athletes keep providing them. We touched on it earlier, but transitioning to a normal life is profoundly difficult.
It has to be.
When you have spent 20 years having your daily existence validated by the roar of an 80,000-seat stadium, the quiet of a suburban home is deafening. The boxing ring becomes the only place on earth they feel truly, undeniably alive, even as their own joints and reflexes are betraying them.
That's powerful.
Every time they step over the ropes at this age, they are fighting the opponent in front of them, but they are also fighting time itself. And time is undefeated.
So what does this all mean? Ultimately, our deep dive into these sources reveals that tonight isn't just another heavyweight bout. It is a classic, timeless sports dichotomy. We are watching the ultimate battle between fading, natural genius, and relentless, hungry discipline.
And that hunger is exactly what makes Makhmudov the ultimate wild card here. We talked about